Straight logistics.
Yes.
How do I actually get started?
Yep.
We're going to use Python tools for Visual Studio. First, you are going to need to install some software on your PC or laptop. There are a lot of different tools out there you can use to write Python code. I saw a couple of comments in the window of people running on operating systems where they couldn't install Visual Studio 2012, 2013. Yes, you can go find, there's, all kinds of tools out there. We're doing it with Visual Studio. You can by all means download another tool if that's not going to install on the operating system that you have in front of you.
Right.
It just means your interface is going to be a little different than ours. But what we're going to be doing is
the concepts will be the same.
The concepts will be the same. The code will be the same. Just difference in terms of what button you press to make it run, what button you press to create a new program.
Yep.
But what we're going to do is we're going to use Visual Studio and an add-on that was built by Microsoft called the Python tools for Visual Studio, which is a really sweet set of tools. And the nice thing about using Visual Studio for this is if you do decide to learn other programming languages, you're not going to have to necessarily learn another tool. If you decide to learn C# or C++, or you want to start building websites with HTML, you can do all of that inside Visual Studio. So that way you don't have to install 6 different tools on your desktop. You don't have to learn all these different interfaces. You can keep working in the same tool. So that's the other nice thing about using Visual Studio is once you've got that up and running, you can use it for a lot of different programming languages.
Yeah.
So how do you install it? And there is a Word document on the GitHub, and I'm hoping we've got a slide or something.
I can actually show right now.
Why don't you show the GitHub now, because that might be useful.
Yeah. So if we kick over to my screen here, up there on the notepad, and I'll throw this into the chat window as well momentarily. You'll notice that it's going to be on the break slides. Is this little shortcut URL? So AKAMS/intro Python code.
So so aka.ms/intro Python code.
Intro Python code. Yep. And again, we'll put that into the Q&A window here momentarily. And if you follow that, that will take you over to the GitHub, which is where we've uploaded all of our files. And the one thing that I would mention here is GitHub, for those of you who are not familiar, is a code repository. And this is where a lot of developers will go ahead and upload code for either sharing with other developers that they're actively working with, or for sharing with the general public, which is exactly what we're doing. So if you haven't necessarily played around or worked a whole lot with GitHub, don't worry too much about that. This is certainly a tool that you're going to be using in the future, if not necessarily right now. But this is just a very easy way for us to go ahead and share everything out. Now, if we kick back to the screen here, what you're going to notice right there, I've got my little download zip. And so if I just click that, it will say, hey, do you want to open or save? And I'm just going to go ahead and click open. Give that a second. And sure enough, there's the zip file with everything. Now, the couple of things that I want to highlight inside of here, number one is the solutions. And this is, and actually I'll kind of go back, and I didn't launch Zoom it.
Those are the solutions to the various. We mentioned there's going to be different challenges that you have to try after the individual chapters. So in that solutions directory, you're actually going to find the solution files for each one. So if you do get stuck on one, you can go take a look and see how we solved it. And then if you cheat and look at the solution, it's not really cheating. Many of us do it. What I would suggest is look at the solution, then minimize it, and then try and write the code yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's where all of those are going to be. And then inside of Office Docs, this is where 2 big items are. Number one is all of the slides that we're using. Now, keep in mind, we're just like typical presenters. These things may change as we go through today and tomorrow. It happens. So, they may change a little bit. But where in the world? Why did you not sync? Ha, that's funny. Of course. Our first little, yours. It's probably on my end. I haven't synced it. But what will be up there momentarily, I can just show this right now, is the how to install Python tools. Yeah, that's it. I just didn't sync. And this has the links that Susan was highlighting in the slide. So Visual Studio for desktop and Update 3. And the big thing here is you do want the desktop apps version for Visual Studio. So make sure you grab that. Again, you want Update 3. Install the Python tools that you can grab from there, and then the interpreter, and then away you go from there. So you will need all of those. If you're going to be doing Visual Studio, if you do want to use another product, you're of course free to do that. We're going to be doing everything with Visual Studio.
Yeah, I saw a couple of questions in the Q&A window about Visual Studio 2012 or earlier versions of Visual Studio. So just to be clear, you can use Visual Studio 2013 Express. That's the one we actually have a link to in the PowerPoint slide. If you are using Express, you have to have the most recent Visual Studio updates applied. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to use the Python tools for Visual Studio. You can run, if you happen to have Visual Studio 2012 Professional, one of the actual full versions of Visual Studio, yes, you can install Python tools for Visual Studio with Visual Studio 2012. It will not work with 2010 and those earlier editions. So if you are running 2010 Professional, you're going to want to download 2013 Express for desktop, and the updates for that to make sure that you can use the Python tools for Visual Studio. So hopefully that helps with a few of you who are having some problems. So first thing to check is make sure you have the updates to Visual Studio. You're running at least 2012, and if it's Express, it has to be 2013. Then you install the Python tools for Visual Studio. And then after that, when you you will also need to install an interpreter, because Python is a language that has to be converted to machine language by an actual interpreter. So when you're writing Python code, the computer doesn't understand Python code. The interpreter basically translates the Python code into a language the computer speaks. And that's what the interpreter is doing.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Now, I did want to throw in one little,
Yes.
you know, one of the fun things about being a coder, well, okay, maybe this says something to our personalities, but we learn to speak geek so you can understand the conversations people are having. So when you start exploring more of Python, you're going to start seeing stuff about CPython and IronPython and PyPy and Jython and so on. There's actually a lot of different variations on Python. The basic syntax concepts we cover here apply to all of them. There might be some slight differences in syntax, but really everything we cover here is going to apply. So we're going to be using, for the record, so you can impress your friends, I was learning CPython with the Python 3.4 interpreter. So that's the version we're working with.
All right.
Yeah, if anybody was to ask you, you're learning IronPython or PyPy, you're learning CPython specifically. And why that's significant and why that's going to affect you is, let's say you're a lazy programmer, like certain people you might meet today.
Nobody at this desk, though. Nobody here. No.
So if you are a lazy programmer like I am, one of the things you find yourself doing is you'll discover that chances are whatever you want to do, someone's already written the code to do it.
The best code in the world is the code that's already written. You know, there's a friend of mine that likes to say we're not launching rockets here, and what he means when he says that is that whatever it is that we're doing, somebody else has already done. Yeah. Feel free to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and programmers are actually incredibly generous about sharing the code they've written. There'll be blog posts with examples of how exactly do I do the following. And so you'll go and you'll start searching around for how do I send a message to this wearable device to make my dinosaur roar.
Yep.
And you'll go search it and you'll find the result. And somebody will have posted a sample of code that does what you want to do. Now, it's possible when you take that code and you try it, it's giving me errors. Now, it may be that the code they posted has mistakes in it. That's been known to happen. But it might be they're working with IronPython and you were doing CPython. So you might find some slight syntax differences when you're looking at Python code examples because of all the different variations. It's not going to be huge differences.
Exactly.
It might be that a method name is different.
Yeah.
But just a heads up, if you're copying and pasting someone else's code and it doesn't work, wait a second, you're using CPython, what were they using?
Yep.
You might find some differences.
Exactly.
So then you get to search for what's this command in JPython or IronPython, what's the equivalent in CPython?
Exactly. Bing is your friend. Stack Overflow is your friend.
Oh, yes.
By the way, one real quick thing. I just want to kick back to my screen again, just because I want to highlight this just one last time. Sure. Again, you know, the URL, and it is in the chat window, and I'll throw it in there a couple more times, and it is going to be on the break slides as well. But I do now want to highlight that I did do my last sync. So if I go back in, remember it's download zip, and I'll kind of zoom in on that. Yeah, download zip. That's going to give you all the files inside of there. And if I click open, and now if I go into the Office docs, there are the ones that I was talking about. So I just needed to sync those up.
Yeah.
And I'll also mention that this is going to be the repository where Susan and I will be uploading all of our sample code so that as we do our demonstrations, and by the way, we are going to be doing our demonstrations live. Here's our apology. Something's going to break. There, I said it.
Yep.
Just get it out of the way. But as we go through this, periodically we'll be uploading to GitHub and make it all available up there.
Yeah, so any code you see us doing here, we'll try to make sure that's all available to you later. So if you want to go back and look at it and go, wait a second, I know they did that, it'll be there for you.
Exactly. Yep.
So now, Christopher,
yes.
I believe I have everything set up on my computer.
Okay.
I have installed Visual Studio 2013.
Yep.
I have installed the most recent updates.
Okay.
I have installed Python tools for Visual Studio.
Okay.
And I've installed the interpreter.
Okay.
Now, you've learned the occasional programming language in the past.
Yep.
How do I make sure I've installed everything right and it's going to work?
You write hello world. You make your computer display hello world. Now, while Susan's getting Visual Studio up here, I'll just kind of mention for those of you who are new to developers, this is sort of the initiation that the first program that you ever write in any language or in any environment is, by tradition, hello world. And actually, if you head on out to Bing, you'll notice that there are websites that will show you how to do hello world in basically any programming language. This is just sort of, this is the way we get people in.
It is like an initiation, but it's also actually really, and it's sort of silly, and it's almost a running joke amongst programmers. Oh, we're going to write hello world, but it really serves an important purpose because it's a way of just making sure that, you have got the tools installed correctly, and you can write a line of code and it will run. Because if hello world doesn't work and you start trying to write a really big complicated program and it doesn't work, you won't know, is the error coming up because your code was wrong or because things aren't installed correctly. So once you see that hello world up and running, you get to give a little, victory moment.
Absolutely.
And say, okay, now I get to start having fun because now I can start writing cool code.
Yep.
So how do we do hello world? So if we can just go to my machine over here. I have Visual Studio up and running on my computer. And when you're doing this at home, you are going to go to File, New Project. And when this pops up, you're going to see a number of different project types you can create. Visual Basic projects, C# projects. As I mentioned, Visual Studio, one of the cool things about it is you can actually do a lot of different programming languages. But we're focusing in on Python today. So if I select Python, then on the right-hand side, you see a number of different types of projects. As I also mentioned earlier, Python can be used for a lot of different things. So you can actually do IronPython instead of CPython if you want to in Visual Studio. You can use it for web applications. You can use it for Windows Forms applications. So there's a lot of different ways you can use it. The project type we're going to use on this particular MVA is Python application. So that's the project type you're going to want to select. And then what becomes important is you're going to want to go in and type in a name for your application. Got a suggestion for a name, Christopher?
Oh, let's see. We're going to have the screen display hello world. Let's go with hello world.
Hello world. All right. So let's go with hello world as our project name. And then you pick a location where you want your file to be stored. You'll notice mine saves to this little repository. That's because it's saving everything I'm doing to GitHub so you guys can access it later. So you save it anywhere you want on your machine so you can locate it when you want it. And once you have that done, you can go ahead and say, OK. And Visual Studio will go off and it'll actually create a project. And on the right-hand side over here, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit over here and show you a bit around the Solution Explorer. And what you're going to see inside there, what is it, Control-Shift to, I got to remember how to do this. Christopher's better with Zoom it than I am. There we go.
There you go.
So one of the things you'll be able to see in there is this Python file called helloworld.py. The files with the .py extension are the files that contain your Python code. So that's the most important file for you to work with. And that file there is actually, get back, is actually the file I can see open over here. This is my code editor window where I write and modify my code. And I think the guys who created the Python tools for Visual Studio had a sense of humor because by default, when you create a brand new project in Python for Visual Studio, it actually gives you the code for Hello World. So I don't even need to type. They must be lazy programmers like us.
Exactly, yes. They realized that you were going to do this demo and decided, you know what, we're just going to make Susan's life easier. Just here, have some code, Susan.
Exactly. So print hello world is the command that will print the message hello world on the screen. So all I need to do is figure out how to run it. So if we go back to Visual Studio, There's two different ways that I can run this code. If you are a keyboard person, and the more you get into coding, the more you're going to get fond of keyboard shortcuts. There is this start debugging will launch your program and start it executing, or you can say start without debugging. So the F5 key or Control and the F5 key will launch your program. So if I just hit the F5 key, up pops a window saying hello world, press any key to continue. I have successfully run a hello world program.
Mazel tov.
Woohoo! Now, if, on the other hand, if you're a mouse person, not a keyboard person, there is a little button at the top of the screen up here. And if you take a look there, you can actually see, there we go, there's our little start button. So you can also click on that start button to launch your program as well. Just depends what you prefer. Just pick the method that you find easier. You may find I might switch back and forth. I'm not necessarily consistent. Sometimes I'll use the function key. Sometimes I'll press that start button. Once you do launch it, it's up and running. Now you need to know how to shut it down again. And once again, there's a few different ways you can do it. I love the fact it gives you a hint right on the screen.
Press the any
Press
key.
a key. Oh, look, it shut down the program. The other option is you can close the window. Just like if you were in Word or Excel, right? Close the window when you're done. The other way of shutting it down is inside Visual Studio. If I go over here, you'll take a look, and once again, you can see a little button there, the stop button. Think of it like a VCR. Play to start playing your program, stop to stop your program.
VCR?
Oh yeah, DVD player, sorry. I'm dating myself again. So you can hit that stop button to stop executing as well. Now this is actually a little Visual Studio coding world tip that helps you out. Is once in a while, you might have this window open and then you do something like go checking your email. And you forget that the program is still running.
I have done this so many times.
So you start going here and making changes, and maybe something's not acting, because it will actually let you modify the code. That's actually one of the neat features of Visual Studio, is you can actually make modifications while your code is still running, which is kind of freaky when you think about it. But it's really, actually, you'll learn to love that feature. But every now and then, there might be certain changes you're making, and it'll say, well, what are you trying to do? The code's still running. And you'll be going, why am I getting that error message? Now here's the thing. There's a cue that can help you remember your code is still running. So if we return to Visual Studio one last time, look in the top right corner up here and see how that stop button appears. That only shows up in red if your code is actively running. Once you hit that button, it's gone. So once you stop executing the code, aha, I know that my code is not running right now. So if you see that stop button, if something weird is happening, take a glance. See if you see that little stop button, go, oh, my code's still running. Hit the stop button. We'll probably do it at some point during this MVA.
Yep.
It'll hit us sometime.
Yeah.
So don't panic. Just check and see if your code's still running.
Exactly.
And we now have our hello world.
Yes.
So we've basically created our first application.
We have. Well done.